yesterday from the Federal Reserve, at least, but they made it clear they're watching and will pounce if need be. Republican Congressman Ron Paul is a longtime critic of the Federal Reserve. In fact, he wants to end the Fed. Congressman, good to have you on the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Maria.
Your reaction to the Fed's decision today to create no new action?
Well, it was expected, and it's pretty benign. It's bland, but I think you mentioned the word in your introduction. There's a word will in there. Assuring the markets, assuring Wall Street, if needed, I will do what's necessary. I'll lower interest rates to 10 below zero if we have to, and I will print, and I'll bail out everybody. So the assurance is always there. But they still have a problem on their hands, and I think everybody knows it. You can't solve the problem we've had for too much money and too much credit and interest rates being too low with spending more money and more debt and just printing more money. That cannot be the answer.
Let me ask you, do you think in a sense the Fed is basically bailing out the White House and Congress because it keeps doing whatever it takes to help the economy when it's in trouble, and that basically eliminates the need for President Obama and Congress to come together on these fiscal issues that are dangerous and looming, and we all know about them, like the fiscal cliff?
You know, there has been studies done over the many, many decades to show that the Federal Reserve Chairman, the Federal Reserve Board, quite frequently does that. They help a president. But what brings to mind, though, is he wants secrecy because he doesn't want it politicized. So, yes, it's possible, but for me to say I know that he's doing that on purpose, but I imagine that he's not purposely hurting the president, so it's very political. It's been that way for a long time, and that's why they don't want us to know what they do.
So let me talk about your bill, Audit the Fed, because that bill won overwhelming support from both political parties. It still faces resistance in the Senate, where Democratic leaders have vowed not to put it to a vote. What are the chances of actually becoming law?
They're not all that great, but the chances of that bill and that concept serving a big purpose, yes, it's very true. But I think what's interesting, if anybody really cares about how things work in here, they ought to go back and look at a speech that Senator Reid gave, I think in 1995, where he was bragging about how strongly he supported the position of auditing the Fed and reining in the Federal Reserve. So it's rather ironic how politics change. So we should look at his 1995 speech and put pressure on him so he does allow a vote, because the American people want the vote. And that's why we even got the vote on the floor last week, because 75 to 85% of the American people want transparency. They might not agree with me on monetary policy, but the bill had nothing to do with monetary policy. It was just saying that we have an obligation and a right to know what the Federal Reserve does in secret when they bail out their friends and bail out banks and get involved in overseas financing, as they're prepared to do in Europe right now. The American people want that.
If you end the Fed, what's the replacement?
Well, you don't have to replace it with anything, but, you know, end the Fed, even in the book, if you read carefully, I don't claim that the Fed should be ended in one day or two. I want, you know, a little bit of competition in the system. The Fed will end itself when they destroy the money, and we'll have to have a new system, and that time will come. So I just want people to have options and be able to use something else other than just using this monopoly, money run by a government monopoly where they have total control. So that's the reason I'd like to repeal legal tender laws and make sure that you don't tax money, and then let the people decide. So that is an option quite different than closing the door one day. That would be a source of quite a bit of chaos.
Well, let me ask you this, because we've got this ECB meeting tomorrow. That's going to be very, very important. It could be a market mover, certainly, once Mario Draghi and company come out with their efforts to stimulate the European economy. I want to talk about getting political here, because you say the Fed has gotten political. Today, you've got President Obama basically jawboning the ECB and Mario Draghi saying, oh, we welcome any efforts by the Eurozone, by the ECB leaders to save the euro, do whatever it takes. Should we be going down this road, getting political with these central banks around the world? You got Ben Bernanke telling us exactly what he's going to do. He doesn't want to do it around the election. You got President Obama jawboning Mario Draghi. What is going on? What happened to the independence of the Fed?
Well, there never was any, and I think you're seeing the handwriting on the wall. It's a farce. But even if they do these things, what they don't understand and will not accept is it doesn't have the effect that they want. They cannot predict what kind of consequences would be, because all the Keynesian big money, big government people said if we do A, B, and C, the recession will be over in a year or so. But it didn't happen because they didn't understand monetary system. They didn't understand how big the bubble was. They didn't understand how bad the debt situation was. They didn't know about malinvestment. And they didn't accept the idea that when things get out of whack, you have to liquidate debt. You don't buy the debt and dump it on the taxpayers. Dump on a lot more financial regulations and think that people have their confidence restored. So under these conditions, confidence will not be restored. And if they're going to badger the ECB into doing what they want, I don't think we should be too optimistic that they're going to solve very many problems.
Ben Bernanke has been warning about the dangers of exposing the Fed to political pressure. Does your bill jeopardize the Fed's independence by subjecting it to such scrutiny?
Well, I would like to see it jeopardize their secrecy, and that's what they think independence is. But no, it doesn't deal directly with monetary policy. We don't, people will come up to me and say, why would you let Congress? They're irresponsible. Why should they control monetary policy? Well, this bill doesn't do it. But the Constitution actually says that it's the Congress that has the responsibility over monetary policy. But I don't want the Congress to decide how much money to print. I don't want anybody printing the money. And but his idea of independence is nothing more than to have political secrecy so he can bail out his friends and bail out certain politicians and manipulate the central banks around the world.
Well, what's your answer then, Congressman? I mean, we've got an economy that's stuck in the mud, unemployment above 8%. Federal Reserve says, look, if growth doesn't spike soon, we're going to be there. You say they shouldn't be there. What's the solution then to getting this economy out of the rut that it's in?
Have done a lot less in the last 5 years, allowed the liquidation and let the debt be liquidated. We should have treated it like we treated the Depression of 1921, a bad year and then it's over. What you do now gets tougher and tougher. So the only thing that they're proposing now is more drugs to a drug addict, and that's the politicians and the bankers are addicted to the drug of easy money, easy credit, and more money. No, I would still go back to it. The longer we wait, the tougher it's going to be, but we should allow interest rates to go to the marketplace and let the people who are in over their head go bankrupt, don't bail out anybody. And yes, it would be tough on the people who abuse the system, but it wouldn't be tough on the taxpayer because they're the ones who are suffering. All the bad debt's getting dumped on the taxpayer, and their income is going down. The standard of living is going down, has been going down for 10 years because, you know, cost of living and everything, and they're losing their jobs. The middle class is getting smaller. You have to stop the mistakes, and most of the time that means take your hands off it. Let the market work. Let the people who save money earn decent interest. That's what we should do.
All right, Congressman, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for your insights. We'll see you soon.